Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. I've been asked by some of my friends, my subscribers, to say a few words about where I come from Romania, and the life that I lived over there. And I will make this video not about necessarily me. I will make it about what I experienced as a child and young adult in Romania, and how things were. I lived under two systems. One, it was a socialist system led by one single, obviously, party, the Communist Party. And then I lived under a so-called freedom and democracy provided by the fall of the so-called Iron Curtain, which I'm sorry to break the news, it was not how should I put it, it just collapsed. It was an understanding right there. We just were used, and we're told that somehow we were the engines of these changes. Yeah, okay. So let's start with this. So someone suggested that I should start about 50 years back. I will start, let's say, when I was a child, a boy. I was a boy, yeah, and I am a man. Identify as a man, because I can't change that, even if I want. So, which I don't. Nevertheless, so Romania had a under this system, the communist system, socialist system. I call it socialist by led by a communist party, because it was not a communist system. It was a socialist system aiming to become utopian and being a communist, which is impossible, but nevertheless, let the kids have their utopia and unicorns. So it was a golden age of Romania when it was in the 70s and very early 80s, which would be about 1982, when Romania was good. Economically was good, socially was good. You could say certain things to a certain extent without any repercussions. You knew what you were supposed to say, you knew what you were not supposed to say, and you kept it for yourself. If you let's go with educational system was mandatory 12 classes, 12 grades, and then after that, if you could go to college, where you go and get tested, and based on the examinations you would admit it or not to university. Not like here, you got a pencil and money and you go to university, most of them anyway. So not everyone could go to university. It was a very strict way of being tested in high school, to admissions to get in high school, to stay in high school, and so on. Something that is more demanding than I found here in the United States. I went to college in the United States here, I went to college in Romania, and I can compare how things are. Over there was much harder than here. I consider college here where as a high school over there in the communist times. School was very strict, and I think it was strict in a way that would not really allow creativity. You had to do what you were told to do, but it was discipline and order. You had uniforms. When you go to school, you had to be clean. They checked your nails, the hair, the length, if you have lice, if you have cavities. And if you had cavities, they would send you for free to the medical system. And I would go to the medical system, which was free. Dental, medical, you go over there and you are free. And they were not idiots, the doctors over there. I gotta tell you that. They were depleted of certain medication and all that, but they were not idiots. All right, that's another thing. School was free. You were giving the textbook for free, and after the year was over, you would pass it to the next. You go, let's say, from 7th grade to the 8th grade, you give it back to school, the textbooks, and the next generation would study. So we would study with the same textbook for 5, 10 years until they change it and come with new textbooks. School was tough and was very. I didn't like to learn. Let's start with this one. I had only preferences. I like history. I like geography. I like philosophy. I like social science. I didn't like necessarily physics. Mathematics I did, but I like geometry very much. But it was the requirements were much stricter than here, I tell you that. With the college, when I went here to college classes of arithmetics, it was about 10th grade maximum in where I come from, 9th grade, 10th grade, and it was easy here. Nevertheless, the medication, they didn't have much medication. They had the basics, antibiotics and so on, but it was hard to find other ones. People were not sick, I gotta tell you that. No mental health issues in the society. You find sometime you knew in a city who was considered crazy, but crazy. And those people would stay usually inside a home. They will not come out, and they were not considered victims, or they were not, you feel sorry about them, but it's, you wouldn't say, hey, my child has a mental illness. That was shameful to say that. There were no obese people. Maybe, let's say in my town that was about 200,000 people, maybe there were 3 obese people that we all knew, but obese. Something that in America here, if you go to a mall, you bump in one at every 5 steps that you take. No offense. I was very surprised negatively of the sizes that I found here. All right. Food was scarce, but was healthy. But in the 70s and the 80s was then the communists got in a bad shape in the 80s, and then they instituted ration. So they rationalized sugar, bread, oil, flour. I think that's it. And the rest, if you were lucky to find, you would find sometimes, but you would not be starving. They say, well, people starve. That's not true. I mean, that's not true. You wouldn't find people on the street dying, or he died of starvation. No, people were thin, healthy, I would say, but not. There was full employment. There was not unemployment. Each and every person had a job. Now, if you graduate from college, according to your GPA, you would pick the location where you want to have a job, in what town, and you usually chose either the capital city, the Bucharest, which I don't know why, but nevertheless, and then you would choose some where you came from, your town. There were about 5 or 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 important university centers in Romania, and that's it. There were some other ones, but nevertheless not as important. If you graduate over there with a college degree, where you are set, how would you lose your job? You will lose your job if you would commit a crime, or if you would steal from the company, and you will not lose your job like from an engineer you become a laborer. No, from an engineer you would be transferred somewhere in the worst location. That's it. Let's say an engineer had a salary, I'm going to use lei, that was the currency and still is. Let's say an engineer had a salary of 4,000 lei. A laborer would have 3,000. So that was kind of the proportion. And some laborers would make more than an engineer. All right. So a doctor would make 4,000, 5,000, no more than that. The president was making 10,000. That's it. So everybody make kind of the same amount of money. There was no overtime paid, but in certain jobs. The gasoline, when Romania played nicely with the Arabs, gasoline was cheap. In the 1980s, you had gasoline rationalized. That means you would receive per month, depending on what area of the country you would live, about 10 liters. It's about 3 gallons a month. Some people would get more, let's say 40 liters, which would get about 10 gallons a month. Some would get 4, and it depends where you live. So it was scarce. People worked. Sunday was off, and Saturday was a working day, but I think it was short day. sanctions. If you do something stupid at work, the only thing they would do, they would take out of your salary a percentage, like 3%, 5%, something like that, for a month or 2 or 3, depending how big the stupid thing you did. But that was it. You could not be a supervisor. You could not get a position of a director somewhere if you divorced, if you had domestic violence issues, if you were an alcoholic. They would not promote you. On the other hand, sometimes, maybe most of the time, you had to be part of the Communist Party in order to be promoted. And what would you do? You just have to parrot whatever those guys required you to parrot, and you didn't believe in it nevertheless. There were little people, not midgets, but a little amount of people who really believed in the dogma of communism. What else can I tell you? We couldn't leave the country. We didn't have passports. The passports were held by the police department or the foreign department, foreign affairs department or something. In order to leave the country, you had to be involved in sports and be a national champion and go into the and you were, whenever they were going abroad, the secret police would come with you, so you don't defect. You would have to be a clean individual to be allowed, and you were not allowed to go in the Western countries, only in the Eastern Bloc, for the fear that you would not return. What else can I tell you? I can tell you a lot of stuff about Romania, and Romania had an independent under Ceausescu, the dictator, the president dictator, had an independent, more or less, foreign policy, unlike the one after the so-called revolution from 1989, which was orchestrated by outside forces with weasels from inside, kind of like what happened in 2014 in Ukraine. Yep, orchestrated by outside, infiltrated with traitors from inside. They killed the president in a mock trial, and on the 25th of December. And nevertheless, the perpetrators were, anyway, I'm not going to go into that. I will go in another video. This is enough for now. I will make more videos like this if you guys, if I receive a positive feedback. If you're not interested, I will not keep going, but I have many stories regarding Romania and realities, not really, and stories, personal stories that I could share. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.